Hey, it's me, MLB. Here's chapter 8 of Chance Ball, and this one is titled A Makeup Session. Here is just a polite warning before we start. There is a scene in this chapter that I've had to skip quite heavily over, but as you all know, the completed book without any of the scenes being chopped out can be found on my Quirky Fanfics website. The link is free from my Patreon. Patreon is the same name as here, MLB224 Fanfics. Free to join to get to the website to read the scenes that have been taken out. If you dare. That I should add that in, if you dare. Okay, so without further ado, let's keep going on the chapter. His seductively low tone was enough to cause a slight throb in your core again, and your breathing hitched. Well, to be honest, you replied airily, I've never met anyone like you either, and I certainly wasn't expecting to fall this hard for you, you admitted, fidgeting with your fingers as the truth came out. Dabi smirked and stuck his tongue out, licking your bottom lip softly. If you think I've fallen hard now, just wait till I show you all the things I can do to you. You'll never want to leave. You closed your eyes and placed a hand between your thighs, pressing down to ease some of the frustration that was building. But, he said in a cheery tone, you wouldn't leave me anyway because I plan to put a ring on it, he said brightly as he pulled away and hopped up, walking over to the food that you had started preparing before your heated session. Ugh, you're such an asshole, you shouted at him, reaching for a jumper and pegging it at the back of his head. He was in hysterics. He found it way too amusing teasing you like that. After you had eaten, you sat together and chatted, while mindlessly poking the fire with sticks. Slowly a cool breeze picked up and you shivered slightly. Dabi eyed you quietly. You okay, sweet cheeks? He asked. Yeah, I'm good, you replied, rubbing the side of your arm to warm that bit up. No, you're not. Come here, he said, opening an arm and shifting his leg to indicate for you to sit between them. You scooted over obediently and shuffled back so that your back was pressed into him. One leg of his bent up either side of you, and his arms closed in around you protectively. You sighed happily and turned your head slightly to kiss his shoulder, your lips meeting lumpy, scarred skin, and you jumped slightly at the odd feeling. Dabi kissed you softly on the neck and nibbled your earlobe. Dabi? How'd you get your scars? You asked quietly. I don't talk about it, came the abrupt reply. You turned your head back to look at him, and noted there was pain in his eyes. You pecked him lightly on the side of his lips, and ran your fingers along the purple scarring on the side of his face. He grabbed your hand firmly. Stop, he said commandingly, his turquoise eyes meeting yours. He looked slightly menacing, and you recoiled at the sight, pulling your hand away and turning back to face the fire. There was a stifling silence for a few more seconds, and your heart pounded in your throat. You wanted to escape the tension, so got up quickly and walked away. Where are you going? Dabi asked suddenly. For a walk, you replied shortly. It's dark, though, he said, jumping up and chasing you. He caught your arm and pulled on it. You didn't look back at him, but yanked your arm away from his grip. Hey, you okay? He asked, realizing that you were upset about something. You didn't have to be like that, you said in an irked tone as you spun around to face him, angry tears forming at the corners of your eyes. Hey, if I don't want to talk about something, I don't have to talk about it. He shot back at you in irritation. Fine, you replied, turning and walking off again. Whoa, wait. Just because I don't want to talk about it doesn't mean I want you gone, he responded, irked that you were being so hell-bent on getting away from him. It's a touchy subject for me, he said, sprinting up beside you and jumping in front of you. I haven't opened up to anyone about it before, he added, grabbing your shoulders and dropping his gaze. Give me some grace, babe. It's traumatic, he said. His voice was vulnerable, raw. You softened. Sorry, you whispered. You said, your voice trailing off. What? You think that because you're my girl, I just skip off into the sunset with you and tell you everything about myself while we held hands and painted rainbows? He scoffed. It's not that simple in the real world, sweetie. You narrowed your eyes and glared at him, annoyed that he had guessed correctly, yet again, for the second time in less than half an hour, he also was being such a dick about it. Harshly you pushed his arms off your shoulders and turned, storming back to the fire and sitting down. He watched you go and then followed slowly after you. As you sat down in a huff and threw a stick into the fire, Dabi sat down next to you. Look at you, being all cute and huffy, he commented coyly. Whatever, jackass, you spat, throwing another stick. You're cute when you're mad, he teased, letting out a low chuckle and leaning over to bite your neck. Get off me, you growled, and pushed him away. Ooh, feisty, he replied, as he leaned back over to you and grabbed your arm and pushed you back, pinning you down on the ground. You squirmed and fought to break free, but it was all in vain. "Listen," he said, leaning into your ear. "Don't be like this. Everything in life takes time. You need to accept that. There may be things that you don't want to tell me about at this point either, and I get that." He kissed you on the neck softly and you weakened. "Let's just let it be and enjoy what we have right now," he continued, kissing you again and dragging his lips down to your collarbone. You let out a small whine as he teased you and resigned yourself. Okay, you've made your point," you replied airily, looking at him with gentleness in your eyes. "Good," he replied, lifting himself and kissing you softly on the lips. The night wore on, and you were starting to get sleepy. "Time for bed, babe?" he asked, cocking his head to look at you. "Mm-hmm," you replied sleepily as you stretched and yawned. He hopped up and rearranged the sleeping bags, waving you to come over and hop in. You got up and walked over, dropping down onto your bag and zipping it up. You shivered again. "Are you still cold?" he asked, slightly exasperated. "Here." He opened his sleeping bag and gestured for you to hop in. "What? I'm not going to fit in there," you scoffed. "There's not enough room for the two of us." "Well, what about if you come and lay on top of me, and then we can get real close," he said with a suggestive look in his eye. "And we'll fit." You hid a smirk. Okay, fine," you said, trying to sound reluctant. You unzipped your sleeping bag and crawled over him, lowering yourself down onto him and purposefully grinding your lower half against him as you lay down. Innocently you curled your head into his chest and stifled a giggle. He had frozen. "You did that on purpose, didn't you?" he said, referring to your grinding on him. "You shouldn't tease me like that, Yin. I have a low tolerance for temptation." "I don't know what you mean," you replied innocently, lifting your head to look at him and batting your eyelashes. He growled aggressively, zipping the sleeping bag up and trapping you against his body. Now I've got you where I want you," he said mischievously. He gently grasped your face and started passionately kissing you, and you gave in immediately and kissed back. You made out for a good 10 minutes, the kisses getting sloppier and more intense by the second, and you couldn't help but grind down on him. "You're so beautiful, Yin," he said, kissing you again. Your eyes were glassed over by this point, thoroughly worn out, and you yawned and curled your head down onto his chest, almost instantly asleep. You slept peacefully on top of him as he wrapped his arms around you, thankful to have you so close. His mind wandered as he looked up into the night sky, the fire crackling nearby. "What am I going to do without you, Yin?" he whispered almost inaudibly, a lump forming in his throat. He pushed the unpleasant thoughts away and gingerly unzipped the sleeping bag, shimmying out of it and sliding out from under you, placing you gently down where he had been. Silently he rolled up one of his jumpers and placed it under your head. You stirred slightly as he did so, but didn't open your eyes, and he breathed a sigh of relief. He didn't want to wake you. He stoked the fire and added some more kindling, standing back to see how far the heat was coming out, and pleased to find that it was just enough to keep your sleeping figure warm. Silently he stood and stared into the fire, hands in pockets, lost in thought. His eyes travelled from the fire to you, and he found himself gazing at you, your beautiful, peaceful face being lit by the light of the fire as shadows flickered across your form, making shapes as it moved. He was hypnotized. He sat down and watched you intently, trying to commit your face to memory. "There might come a time where I may never see this face again," he thought as he let out a long, disheartened sigh. "I think I love this girl. I don't want to let her go, but I don't know what to do. I don't know if it'll work out." He was still so lost in thought that he didn't register that your eyes had opened and you were staring directly at him. He jumped. "Dabi, you okay?" you asked groggily. "Yeah," he said gruffly, looking away. "Go back to sleep, babe." You drifted back off, watching him as your lids closed, succumbing to sleep. He stayed up most of the night watching over you, keeping the fire going. He never wanted this night to end. The next morning you awoke to him making a very makeshift breakfast. "You're up early," you said hoarsely, your voice not yet finding its feet, hair tousled and sticking up everywhere. Dabi chuckled at the sight. "You look so cute right now. I can't deal with this," he said, turning away with a smile still plastered on his face. You ignored his comment. "Dabi, you look tired. Did you even sleep last night?" you asked as you looked across to the sleeping bag beside you. It was untouched. Kinda," he replied stiffly, avoiding eye contact. "You okay?" you asked, head cocked to the side. "Yeah, fine," he replied dully again. He was thinking about this little impromptu getaway, all being over and having to get back to reality. You snuck up behind him and wrapped your arms around him. This has been fun, Dabi. It doesn't have to be our last bush escape. You read him well. He smiled, his face hidden from you. So you like doing it in the bush. I'm glad. Not just that, you egg, you snorted, playfully punching him on the back of his shoulder. What's for breakfast? Me, he replied, spinning to face you with a stupid big grin on his face. You slapped him. Needless to say that when you both found the rest of the school later that day, you got suspended immediately for a week. Your parents were pissed and kept you on house arrest, so you decided to redecorate and paint your room to pass the time. That next week, you answered your phone when you felt it vibrating in your pocket. It was Dabi. Hey, bad girl, what you doing? He asked in his low, rich voice. Redecorating my room, you replied, moving yet another piece of furniture. How do I have so much stuff in here? You need a hand? He asked. You're on house arrest too, dummy. How are you going to help me? Telepathically? You joked. My mum is at work, he said, hinting at where he was going with this. Well, my parents are at work too, you replied, leaving a sentence open and suggestive. I'll see you in 10, he replied quickly before hanging up. You smirked and hung up. Not even 10 minutes later, and he was on your doorstep, out of breath and sweating. Where's the fire? You joked, opening the door and letting him in. He grabbed your thighs and hoisted you up, carrying you to your room. You squealed with delight and wrapped your arms around his neck, kissing him passionately as he walked. Awkwardly, he pushed the door open and walked over to your desk, lying you down on it as he kissed down your neck and onto your collarbone, enjoying the salacious noises you made as he kissed and nipped at your skin. And let's just leave that there. There ends chapter 8. We can just assume that there's some hanky-panky that goes on in Yin's room, and we'll pick it up tomorrow when there's not so much hanky-panky going on. And I'll see you tomorrow for that one.